Folks, welcome back to another episode of The Fallen Badge. Today we're going to be looking at the murder of Trooper James Gross, Ohio Highway Patrol. Trooper Gross had 2 years on with the Highway Patrol there in Ohio. Now, he was 27 years old. He had gotten him an associate's degree there at the University of Akron. Now, right about that second year or so, he had been sent to the area there around Ashland, Ohio. That's where he was riding. Now, he'd been married just about 2 years. He got married just right after he graduated from the Trooper Academy. I know his mom and daddy were awful proud of him. In fact, I think his daddy just died about 5 years ago. Now, a fellow we're going to be talking about in this episode, I know this sounds like a broken record, but now this fella, he's just not any good. In fact, we're going to find out he can't even treat his mama right. And if you're going to be abusive to your mama, then you know you're going to be bad news for anybody else that runs across you. So this story's gonna begin in a little suburb east of Columbus, Ohio called Reynoldsburg. And it's gonna end about 120 miles away. And along that journey, we're gonna lose an awful good man to a lucky shot fired by a coward. All right, the following information is going to come from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. At approximately 5 p.m., January 18th, 1996, our suspect, he shows up over the condominium that he shares with his mama. And he told her, he said, "Mama, I ain't going to the Kroger's warehouse to work." So then he leaves the condo and he comes back around midnight. Now, when he gets back, our suspect is intoxicated. And he told his mama he wanted to be left alone. Well, now, he must have been loud because his mama asked him to quiet down, and then he got to screaming at her. Now, she was worried about all his screaming and carrying on was going to cause the neighbors to call the police on him. Because you see, our suspect, he'd had run-ins with the police. Because he was on probation for carrying a concealed weapon. And he also was under the belief that the police were harassing him. So now Mama, she calls the suspect's sister and asks her to come over. Well, now when the suspect finds out that Mama's done called his sister over there, he yanks all the phone lines out of the wall. And then told his mama not to call the police, which was probably pretty well ensured by the fact he pulled all the phone lines out of the walls. But when you're drunk and you're stupid, I guess you have to re-emphasize that. So now our suspect, he pulls a pistol out of the gun cabinet, which I'm not really sure why he would have guns in his house, but this was 1996. So nowadays, if you get some kind of a weapons charge, you're you're liable to be told that you can't have any guns in the house. But either way, now he's got him a gun. Now his sister shows up, and when she does, he tells his mama and his sister to pack 2 bags for him with clothing and guns. Now he's doing that while he's pointing a gun at him, which I guess is a good way to get compliance. Well, not being happy with that, he then ties his mama and his sister up to a pole in the basement. Now, while our suspect is down there in the basement with his mama and his sister, he's sitting there trying to get a clip fed into the pistol he's got. Well, the pistol discharges and it hits his mama in the foot. So now he didn't call an ambulance for his mama. He didn't untie her. He just left. Now, he leaves the condo, he gets in his car, and he's heading for Interstate 71. Now, some motorists out on 71 were calling in to the police talking about a brown car that was driving erratic. And this is early morning hours of January 19th. Now, Trooper Gross, he gets the information from his dispatcher, and then he heads off over to 71 to look for this brown car. Now, it don't take him but a couple of minutes, and he sees the car, or he's pretty sure that's the car. Now, before he gets it stopped, Trooper Gross, he gives out the tag number on the car. And of course, registration comes back in the suspect's name. And it also says that the owner of the car is not allowed to drive because he's got a prior DUI conviction. So now Trooper Gross, he pulls over the suspect's vehicle. Now what Trooper Gross doesn't know is what our suspect has done to his mom and his sister. Because now they've gotten loose and they done called the police. And now the police have done put out a bolo on the suspect in the car. But now they thought he was going to be running southbound away from town instead of northbound. Well, that information wasn't available to the Highway Patrol and to Trooper Gross. And now obviously Trooper Gross would have handled this stop a little bit different if he'd have known this fella done shot his mama. But he didn't know, dispatcher didn't know. Now several motorists who were going northbound on Interstate 71, they later testified at trial as to what happened. They said they saw Trooper Gross. He stepped out of his vehicle and he walked up to the suspect's vehicle. And he started to lean down and speak to the suspect through the window. Now, if he was following his training, which I'm sure he was, his body would have been bladed where his left side would have been closest to the window. His right side would have been away from the window. That's so you can protect your gun. Well, these motorists that were driving by, they said they heard a pop and they saw a flame shoot out from the window. And then they saw Trooper Gross spin around, and it looks like he's trying to run back away from the suspect's car. And then he slips and he falls. Now later on they would determine that because it was wet, that Trooper Gross had actually fallen because of the wet conditions on the roadway. Now the bullet that was fired hit him in the left arm. So if he doesn't slip on that wet pavement, he probably gets to cover. But in any event, he falls down. He falls on his stomach, on his face. So his back is to the suspect who's still in the car. Now, some of these same witnesses said they saw the suspect lean out of the window of the car and fire some more shots at Trooper Gross. Those bullets got below the vest, hit Trooper Gross in the lower back, traveled up his body and hit his heart, and it killed him. Now, our suspect, he takes off. Now, a UPS driver and a deputy sheriff, and I don't know, I think that deputy sheriff might have been off duty, but either way, they stopped and they started doing CPR and trying to do what they could for Trooper Gross. But now, obviously, they didn't know it at the time, but that bullet's done went up and it's done blown his heart up, so he's dead. So now several motorists, according to the appellate court, started following the suspect vehicle. So we've got the suspect driving at a high rate of speed northbound on 71, and he's got a caravan of cars, over-the-road truck drivers, tractor trailers, you name it, and they're all chasing him. And then, oh, by the way, the police show up and they're in the chase. So now this chase goes on for 29 miles from the shooting location. Our suspect, I don't know if he was trying to get off onto the ramp or not, but either way, he crashed at the northbound ramp of I-71. Right there, that's where State Highway 18 that runs into Medina. It's right there at that exit. That's where he crashes out. Now, our suspect, he gets indicted by the grand jury there in Ashland County. Aggravated murder, possession of a weapon while being disabled or under, this says while under disability. In other words, he was drunk. And then the third one would have been the kidnapping of his sister and his mama. So, of course, he pled not guilty. He even tried the I'm insane. Now, he got convicted on all counts June 19th, 1996. Now, the jury said that our suspect should die for what he's done. So the court said, we agree. So July 10th, 1996, the suspect is sentenced to death. Now, the trial judge wasn't taking any chances. He went on and sentenced the suspect to 18 months on the firearms charge and 5 to 10 years on the kidnapping charge. And he made sure they ran consecutively to the death sentence. In other words, they all run together. And I'm glad the trial judge did that because the appellate court was going to overturn it. And our suspect ended up getting a life sentence instead. Trooper James Robert Gross. End of watch, January 19th, 1996.